The world is in ruins, and cities are constantly burning. Ever since people started awakening superhuman powers, terrorism has become a daily reality. Since the government couldn't stop the chaos, anyone without powers had to start hearing their own protection. And among the elite bodyguards for hire, there's one name that stands above everyone else. He's known as the absolute strongest in the business. His name is Ryushin. He's guarded every big-shot VIP you can think of and has never once failed a mission. His protection success rate is a flat-out impossible 248%. The reason he can maintain such a ridiculous record is simple. This time, the target is a rising solo idol named Ri, and the hit is scheduled for her concert in 3 days. A C-class terrorist named Hesk thinks it's going to be an easy payday. He's never even seen her face, but he knows her popularity is skyrocketing. She used to be part of a group, but a nasty incident forced her to go solo. Hesk couldn't care less about her history, he just wants to know when they strike. But his partner, Hura, warns him there's one major problem. That problem is her bodyguard, Ryushin. Hesk admits he's heard the rumors, but he's not easily impressed. He wants to know what kind of power this guy is actually packing. Word on the street is that he can wield every single weapon in existence. Even Hura has to admit he doesn't know the full extent of the man's abilities. Suddenly, another voice calls them a bunch of cowards. She points out that in the end, he's just a bodyguard. This is Nader, a class terrorist who sees bodyguards as nothing more than meat shields. She laughs off the idea of a human carrying that many weapons around. They're ready to send everyone to hell, but a sudden crack appears in the wall behind them. The entire concrete wall explodes inward in a burst of blue energy. Smoke and dust fill the room as the terrorists start coughing. They're left wondering what the hell just happened to their hideout. As the dust begins to settle, they scramble to see who breached the room. Nader's eyes go wide as she realizes they've been found. A lone figure stands perfectly still in the middle of the wreckage. It's Ryushin, looking completely unbothered. The terrorists are stunned as he calmly walks into the room. His reputation comes from a unique, personal philosophy on what it means to protect someone. He doesn't answer their questions, he just tosses his briefcase into the air. The case begins to glow and shift, transforming in midair. Ryushin reaches out and grabs a handle made of pure, crackling energy. He activates hammer mode, manifesting a massive glowing warhammer. His goal is simple: make sure danger never even reaches his client. He slams the hammer down, and the entire group is sent flying by the impact. A massive shockwave tears through the room, leaving nothing but blood and rubble. He wipes out every single threat before they can even start their mission. To the rest of the world, he's just a bodyguard. Nader is coughing up blood, barely able to speak after that massive hit. She realizes he's not just a protector, he's a cold-blooded killer. Ryushin doesn't even spare her a glance as he picks up his case. Target secured, and his protection success rate climbs to 249%. It's an unconventional way to handle protection, but his results are undeniable. Instead of waiting for a threat to strike, he simply erases the problem before it can start. Nearby, the idol concert is in full swing, with the crowd completely unaware of the bloodbath. Fans are cheering wildly, waving their blue light sticks in time with the music. But back at the hideout, a new voice greets Ryushin in the dark. He's sitting on the ground, wounded and catching his breath, as a group of strange figures surrounds him. A girl named Neo steps forward, identifying herself as a department head from a terrorist group called Tragedy. She's an S-class terrorist, the kind of threat that should be impossible for one man to handle. Ryushin looks up, exhausted, clearly not in the mood for another fight. He's annoyed because he thought he'd already cleared out every potential threat to the concert. Neo tells him not to worry, because they aren't interested in the idol girl. She makes it clear that they're only there for him. Ryushin is surprised, but she has one question for him before things get violent. She wants to know why he protects his clients in such a brutal, proactive way. That question hits home, making him think back to where his philosophy actually started. It goes back to when he first joined the company as a rookie. His very first assignment was to guard a four-member idol group. He shook hands with the girls, promising to protect their dream of performing for the world. His superior was the chief, a blue-haired woman who didn't seem to care much about the rookies. Even though they knew exactly where the enemies were, the chief insisted on waiting for them to strike first. Ryushin questioned if they were really okay just sitting around. He suggested they storm in and hit the terrorists before they could start their attack. The chief just laughed and asked if he was planning to become an assassin or something. She told him not to lecture his superior and just leave the job to her. But because they kept waiting for the attack, everything ended in disaster. The aftermath was a nightmare, with blood everywhere and most of the girls already dead. The group he swore to protect was completely wiped out. Ri was the only one left, sobbing over her fallen friends. Ryushin could only stand there, covered in blood and completely broken by the failure. All he could do was whisper a desperate apology to the moonlit sky. He sat alone in the dark for a long time, unable to face what had happened. Eventually, the chief walked over and asked why he was hanging his head. He told her he'd failed to protect them on his very first mission. She just looked at him coldly and asked what he was talking about. In her mind, the mission was a success because the actual client was safe. The girls had chipped in what little money they had to hire protection. But they'd only paid enough for exactly one person to be guarded. The chief coldly reminds Ryushin that since Ri survived, the mission was technically a success. She tells him to stop mopping, emphasizing that their only priority was the person who actually paid for protection. Ever since that tragic day, Ryushin felt like his life had lost all its meaning. He wandered through the streets like an empty shell, trying to drown his guilt in alcohol. But in the middle of a lonely night, a familiar sound caught his attention. His eyes widened as he realized who was playing the music. It was Ri, standing on a street corner and playing her acoustic guitar for anyone passing by. Even after all that happened, she hadn't stopped singing. Ri never gave up on her music or the bond she shared with her fallen friends. To fulfill their collective dream, she kept pushing herself to perform day after day. Watching her resilience, Ryushin finally found a new dream of his own. To make sure a tragedy like that never happens again, he decided on a new path. He swore to wipe out every threat lurking in the world before they could ever strike. Back in the present, Neo mocks his story, calling it a pathetic tear-jerker. Ryushin stands his ground, asking her why a big-scale terrorist group like Tragedy has come for him. He recognizes the organization's emblem, realizing just how dangerous his current situation is. Neo confirms that they are here as representatives of the infamous Tragedy. She closes her eyes, relishing the fear and tension she's created in the room. She reaches out a hand, telling Ryushin that she has an offer for him. Ryushin remains skeptical, wondering what a group of terrorists could possibly want from him. Neo proposes that if he teams up with them, they'll leave both him and Ri alone forever. She reminds him that he can't possibly eliminate every single threat on his own. She argues that it's smarter to work with the side he can actually negotiate with. Neo waits for his answer, her glowing green eyes fixed on him with arrogant confidence. She asks if he's ever heard the saying about negotiating with people like her. Ryushin doesn't hesitate for a second, stating that he does not negotiate with terrorists. Neo's playful expression vanishes as she calls him an idiot for his refusal. With a cold command, she tells him to die and orders her subordinates to attack. She glares at him, offended that he would choose certain death over her offer. Ryushin grips his suitcase, staring down the horde of monsters charging toward him. A low, heavy vibration fills the air as he prepares to unleash his power. The demonic terrorists rush him from all sides, weapons drawn and ready to kill. Suddenly, the entire area is plunged into total, suffocating darkness. The attackers freeze in place, completely disoriented by the sudden loss of vision. They shout in frustration, terrified by the shadows that have suddenly swallowed the room. One of the men panics, desperately calling out for Neo in the pitch black. Neo ignites her bat, creating a burst of orange flame that cuts through the dark. She tells everyone to stay calm as she frantically searches the room for Ryushin. In the flickering light, she sees her men lying in heaps on the ground, already slaughtered. She's frozen in pure shock, realizing how quickly Ryushin decimated her entire squad. Before Ri can even take her place on the stage, the job is already done. Ryushin moves with blinding speed, his suitcase glowing with power as he finishes the remaining enemies. Ryushin stands in the shadows, his red eyes glowing with a deadly light as he oversees the battlefield. Neo is paralyzed with shock as she gazes at the aftermath of his swift and silent assault on her squad. With a powerful strike, Ryushin continues his relentless decimation of the remaining terrorists. Neo coughs up blood, the sheer force of the confrontation starting to take its physical toll on her. She glares at him from the ground, her face bruised and her pride completely shattered. She finally realizes that Ryushin was intentionally stalling for time to pick off her men one by one in the dark. A close-up reveals her eyes trembling with fear as she realizes she's facing a true monster. The glowing blue energy from Ryushin's suitcase crackles through the thick, smoky air of the venue. Ryushin stands tall among the wreckage, completely unbothered by the carnage he's just caused. Neo looks up at him, sweating and terrified as he officially classifies her as a threat that must be eliminated. Ryushin prepares for the finish, activating the knuckles mode of his high-tech briefcase weapon. The intense blue lightning from his weapon illuminates the entire room as he locks onto Neo. Neo grits her teeth and smiles manically, refusing to believe a single human could actually stop her. Ryushin's expression remains cold and professional, unaffected by her desperate and bloody taunts. Enraged, Neo summons a torrent of demonic fire around her, screaming at him to stop being so arrogant. She charges forward with reckless abandon, her body engulfed in flames as she prepares a final counterattack. Ryushin watches her approach with calm and calculating eyes, ready to meet her head-on. Neo undergoes a terrifying transformation, her hair turning silver white and her eyes glowing a deep crimson. She draws a massive red blade, mocking Ryushin's dream as nothing more than a naive and foolish fantasy. With a roar of fury, she swings her flaming sword, determined to crush the man who defied her. But Ryushin is much faster, meeting her strike with a massive, energy-charged punch to the gut. The impact is absolutely devastating, sending a massive shockwave through the venue and shattering Neo's defenses. She is blown backward with incredible force, crashing onto the floor in front of the stunned and confused audience. Neo groans in agony as she struggles to pick herself up, her confidence replaced by a deep sense of defeat. The kid is completely mesmerized by the giant blue light, having no idea he's standing in a war zone. Behind him, Neo is already armed and ready with her massive flaming blade. Ryushin's boots hit the pavement. He mutters a quick oops, like he just realized he stepped in something he shouldn't have. The bodyguard steps out from the smoke, blue lightning still crackling around his hand. He casually admits that he might have overdone it with the force on that last strike. Neo stares him down, looking absolutely stunned that anyone could just walk through her attacks like that. Ryushin looks back with those intense red eyes, thinking about the first time he heard about Ri's big dream. Back then, he thought it was nothing but a naive fantasy. Flashback to a younger Ryushin, looking a lot cleaner in his suit as he grabs a quick cup of coffee. He was sitting with Ri, listening to her explain her plan to save the world, one person at a time. He wasn't really buying it, pointing out the impossible scale of trying to help billions of people. But the idol stood her ground, telling him that instead of just talking, you have to take actual action. She gave him a warm smile, clearly convinced that her dream was actually within reach. And it started small, with just 10 people watching her perform on a tiny stage. But that 10 soon turned into dozens, as more people began to take notice. Eventually, it was hundreds of fans waving blue light sticks in unison. Back in the present, Neo is ready to turn that light into a bloodbath. The cheers from the arena start to peak as Ri's stage time gets closer. Ryushin and Neo lock eyes, the tension between them reaching a breaking point. The protagonist sparks up his knuckles, vowing to take out every threat just like Ri builds her dream, one by one. Neo yells at him to stop being so ridiculous. She hoists her massive flaming sword, arguing that new dangers will just keep rising no matter how many he kills. She shows off the crest of her organization, Tragedy, claiming that total elimination is impossible. Instead of fighting, she offers him a spot on her team, thinking they're the only ones he can actually reason with. Ryushin goes quiet for a moment, Ri's words about never knowing until you try echoing in his head. Neo loses her cool and threatens to kill the kid, waving the light stick right then and there. The boy looks terrified as he clutches his blue stick, Neo's anger boiling over. Ryushin's eyes glow a dangerous red as he repeats her challenge to protect everyone. The terrorist just grins, showing her fangs as she mocks the idea of a hero even existing. She starts to transform, her feet becoming massive, glowing claws that tear into the ground. Neo blasts off into the sky, a trail of blue energy following her as she prepares to end the show. Ryushin just stands his ground, holding onto the light stick while she laughs at his soft little dream. A close-up of his eye shows the blue energy starting to surge through him with insane intensity. Suddenly, a massive pillar of blue flame erupts from the arena. Neo hovers in the sky, wreathed in blue energy like a literal demon of destruction. She screams that she's going to blow the entire venue to hell, starting with him. She unleashes her ultimate move, Onibai, a massive sphere of energy descending from the clouds. The blast is blinding, looking like it's about to erase everything in its path. But Ryushin isn't done. He switches his gear to cheering stick mode, the simple toy now humming with godlike power. He makes a silent promise to himself to never let another tragedy like that happen again. He finds his footing and mocks the size of her attack, saying it's actually just right. He launches himself straight into the heart of the blue explosion like a comet. He decides to frame the whole blast as nothing more than a flashy opening effect for the concert. He swings the energy-infused stick with everything he's got, clashing against her fire. The impact creates a massive glowing cross in the sky, perfectly shielding the arena below. Neo is left floating in the air, her face twisted in total shock as she screams that it's impossible. Long silver hair catches the light, flowing smoothly as the performance begins. The idol retakes the stage, her presence commanding the entire stadium's attention. Her blue eyes scan the massive crowd, looking out over the sea of fans. High above the arena, a sudden burst of blue energy shatters the night sky. The audience watches in awe, assuming the light show is part of the performance. But even Ri stops mid-song, her gaze drifting upward toward the mysterious explosion. Someone is watching from above, and they're moving with purpose. A high-tech beacon drops through the clouds, trailing a bright blue path behind it. A figure follows the beacon down, falling through the air with professional calm. Ryushin isn't just dropping in, he's making a precise, calculated entrance. Ri remains frozen on stage, her eyes wide as she watches the descent. A subtle expression of recognition tugs at the corner of her mouth. The announcer's voice cuts through the silence, asking the fans if they're ready for the show's next phase. A hand in a white glove flexes, preparing for the violent work ahead. Ri regains her composure and shouts to the crowd, her voice full of energy. The entire stadium erupts in a deafening roar of approval. Fans are in a frenzy, waving their lightsticks and cheering until they're hoarse. On stage, Ri gives it her all, her voice ringing out through the flashing lights. Somewhere far from the glitz and glamour, a girl named Neo slowly starts to wake up. Ryushin is already there, sitting nearby and asking if she's finally decided to join the living. She groans in pain, but he just tells her to sit back and enjoy the distant show. He gestures toward the glowing stage, asking her if the sight isn't simply beautiful. Far below, a young fan swings a blue lightstick with pure, unadulterated joy. Neo doesn't share the sentiment, staring down at the scene with a dark, conflicted expression. Ryushin tells her she's lucky. Dying at his hands would have been a lot easier on her. He warns her that since their deal failed, she and the idol are both on tragedy's radar. Neo asks him what his next move is going to be now that everything's fallen apart. Ryushin's red eyes burn with a cold, terrifying intensity as he looks out into the night. He watches Ri's radiant smile and remembers the promise he made to himself. He's going to keep doing exactly what he's always done, eliminate every possible threat. The scene shifts to the dark, crumbling streets of the terrorist-controlled city, Naftafel. Inside a grimy warehouse, a group of armed thugs waits in the shadows. Ryushin arrives at the door, briefcase in hand, and confirms he's at the right place. He faces the entire mob alone, a blue aura of power flaring around his body. He isn't impressed by the city or the criminals who claim to own it. With Neo secured behind him, he decides it's time to start the preemptive cleanup. One of the thugs steps forward, barking out a demand to know who the hell he is. Ryushin just tells them his job starts now, as the energy around him surges. The terrorists charge forward all at once, thinking they can overwhelm him with numbers. Ryushin moves like a blur, instantly slamming the first attacker into the floor. His suitcase transforms, shifting into a massive energy hammer that crackles with electricity. The rest of the gang lunges at him, but they're already too late to stop what's coming. Ryushin slams his high-tech hammer into the ground, the concussive force blasting the armed guards away like ragdolls. He doesn't stop moving, weaving through the falling debris with his weapon humming with lethal energy. When the dust settles, the ground is littered with the broken forms of everyone who tried to stand in his way. One of the survivors barks out a frantic question, demanding to know what the hell he thinks he's doing. The intruder ignores the posturing, his cold gaze scanning the group of terrorists standing before him. He answers with a single calm word, protection. The thugs exchange confused glances, unable to wrap their heads around his bizarre statement. They realize the rumors were true. This man is completely unhinged. A massive figure in a trench coat steps forward, exhaling a thick cloud of cigar smoke into the air. This is Ostium, the S-class gatekeeper of Naftafel, and he's clearly unimpressed by the display. Ryushin stands his ground, telling the newcomers that they aren't enemies. They're just a risk he needs to eliminate. He declares his intent to wipe them all out in one clean sweep. The grunts are ready to tear him apart, but Ostium raises a hand to hold them back. The gatekeeper has a question for the man who just broke into his secret hideout. He's genuinely curious about how Ryushin managed to track down a location that even the Shielder's agency doesn't know about. Nearby, the green-haired girl, Neo, can only let out muffled whimpers through her gag. Ostium stares him down, his eyes glowing with a faint blue light as he waits for an answer. Neo is shaking, her eyes darting between her former comrades and the man who currently holds her. Ryushin looks down at the captive girl with a detached expression. Suddenly, Neo is sprawled on the ground, bound by glowing blue energy as she lets out a manic, mocking laugh. Ryushin doesn't react to her outburst, his face remaining a mask of cold professionalism. Neo boasts that this gate is the only way into the city center, and it's guarded by the deadliest terrorists in the world. She claims to be an impenetrable wall that no intruder has ever breached. She let out a manic, mocking laugh, telling Ryushin that the only reason she led him to this place was so they could turn it into his burial ground. Confident that Ryushin is about to meet his end, Neo shouts that her comrades are going to snuff him out. But Ostium's focus isn't on the intruder. He turns his cold gaze toward Neo. He asks her if she's completely lost her mind. The smug grin on Neo's face instantly vanishes as she senses the shift in the room. Ostium accuses her of being a coward who sold out her own base just to save her skin. He demands to know what happened to her subordinates. Neo stammers, her confidence replaced by pure terror as the pressure mounts. She tries to explain that she didn't sell anyone out and that they all got captured together. The light above flickers, casting long, ominous shadows over the confrontation. Ostium doesn't care about her excuses. He tells her that as soon as Ryushin is dead, she's being executed on the spot. The weight of his words hits her like a ton of bricks. The realization that she's doomed regardless of the outcome hits her, and Neo feels like the ground is disappearing beneath her. She looks at the group of killers she once called family, realizing she has nowhere left to run. If Ryushin falls, she's dead. It's as simple as that. Ryushin notes the irony, pointing out that it sounds like her own people can't stand her. Neo lets out a weak, nervous chuckle, desperately trying to play it off as a misunderstanding. The other terrorists aren't laughing. They start describing the horrific ways they're going to torture her. Tears stream down Neo's face as her former allies describe exactly how they're going to yank her horns out. The terrorists loom over Neo, their faces contorted with hatred as they mock her for her flashy outfit and pigtails. Ryushin watches the scene with detached interest, his glowing suitcase hammer casting a cold blue light over the warehouse floor. A single tear rolls down Neo's cheek, her green eyes shimmering with fear as she realizes her former comrades are out for blood. Two of the thugs roar at her, their red eyes burning with a murderous hunger that leaves no room for mercy. Neo pleads for Ryushin to hang in there, desperate for him to intervene as the mob brands her a traitor. Ostium steps forward through the toxic green haze, his muscular frame cutting an imposing figure as he addresses the intruder. The gatekeeper makes a simple offer: hand over the girl and Ryushin can walk out of the hideout alive. Neo's voice is thick with panic as she warns Ryushin that these men are killers who never honor their agreements. Ostium narrows his eyes, questioning Ryushin's connection to the girl and whether he's just another expendable member of her group. Ryushin remains silent, his crimson eye fixed on the cigarette-smoking giant standing before him. Neo looks up with a flicker of hope, her eyes searching for any hint that Ryushin might actually care about her fate. Ryushin lets out a faint hum of contemplation, his face remaining a blank slate of indifference. He runs a hand through his messy black hair, acting as if he's genuinely struggling with a difficult decision. He sighs, nodding that the sheer number of enemies makes a direct confrontation seem like a losing battle. Ryushin leans down and places a hand on Neo's head, suggesting with a cold smirk that taking Ostium's deal might be the smartest move. Neo's eyes widen in horror, and she reminds him that he defeated an S-class combatant without even breaking a sweat. Ryushin maintains his facade of weakness, claiming he's outmatched while Neo desperately shouts that he's lying. He argues that if he steps in now, it would be no different than a bodyguard protecting a known terrorist. Neo seizes on that logic, shouting that even a terrorist has the fundamental right to hire a professional bodyguard. Ryushin turns and begins to walk away, his suitcase hammer clattering softly against his leg as he prepares to leave her behind. He stops briefly to point out that she hasn't even established an official contract with him yet. With a casual wave of his hand, he continues his exit, effectively leaving Neo to face the executioners alone. Neo's heart hammers against her ribs, and cold sweat breaks out on her skin as she realizes Ryushin is truly abandoning her. The terrorists don't waste another second, lunging forward with their blades and spears aimed directly at her. Neo lets out a sharp, terrified cry, the gravity of her impending death finally sinking in. The thugs scream that traitors deserve nothing but death, their weapons glowing with a menacing energy as they strike. She bellows Ryushin's name one last time, her voice cracking with the pure desperation of the doomed. As the attackers leap toward her like a pack of wolves, Neo begs for her life in a high-pitched, frantic wail. In a final, last-ditch effort to survive, she shrieks that she's hearing him as her bodyguard and orders him to protect her. Ryushin halts instantly, looking back over his shoulder with a look that suggests this was his plan all along. A dark, satisfied smirk spreads across his face as he asks her what the payment for such a contract will be. Neo offers him all the money she has, but Ryushin quickly clarifies that cash is the one thing he doesn't want. He taps his suitcase, and a brilliant holographic display erupts into the air, bathing the scene in a digital glow. Neo stares at the flickering screen in confusion, her breath hitching as she waits for his true demand. A glowing contract appears, outlining a deal where Neo must provide every scrap of information she has on something called tragedy. Ryushin's eyes burn with an intense, focused light as he demands that she hand over every secret she's been keeping. Neo's face pales with horror, knowing that giving up that information is a line she was never supposed to cross. Ryushin doesn't give her a moment to hesitate, turning back toward the exit and declaring that the deal is officially off. The terrorists are upon her now, their sharp weapons hovering inches from her throat as she screams in absolute terror. Neo lets out a primal scream of terror as she feels the cold air of the descending blades on her skin. The image of her despair is blurred by the sheer speed of the incoming attack as the thugs move in for the kill. With death staring her in the face, Neo has no choice but to mentally sign the digital contract and give Ryushin exactly what he wants. With tears streaming down her face, Neo screams that she has signed the contract, her green pigtails whipping as she pleads for her life. A brilliant flash of blue energy erupts from the digital agreement, signaling that the deal is officially active. Ryushin declares that the contract is in effect, and a massive shockwave of electric power blasts through the surrounding enemies. The force of the impact sends the terrorists flying, their bodies mangled and weapons shattered by the sudden, overwhelming counterattack. Ostium watches from the shadows, his expression unreadable as the air crackles with the aftermath of Ryushin's lethal move. Neo looks up through her tears, her voice trembling as she tells Ryushin she'll be counting on him to see her through this. Ryushin holds up the glowing digital document with a small, confident smile, officially addressing Neo as his dear client. He lunges into the remaining crowd of thugs, his body trailing arcs of blue lightning as he prepares to finish the job. He moves like a blur of lethal precision, his suitcase hammer swinging through the air and leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. A terrorist with long, dark hair screams in agony as she is caught in the path of the concussive force. The mob of attackers tries to overwhelm him from all sides, but Ryushin remains the eye of the storm, unyielding and untouchable. He delivers a devastating blow to a man in armor, the electric discharge throwing the attacker backward into the darkness. With a swift and brutal kick, Ryushin dispatches another assailant, his every movement calculated and efficient. He spins through the battlefield, the blue light of his weapon illuminating the faces of his terrified opponents. A trio of bizarre-looking terrorists charges toward him, their eyes wild with desperation as they try to reclaim the upper hand. Another massive explosion of energy rips through the center of the hideout, silencing the cries of the attackers once and for all. A female terrorist is thrown into the air, her face twisted in shock as Ryushin passes by like a vengeful spirit. He stands tall amidst the wreckage of his enemies, his suit barely rumpled despite the carnage he has just unleashed. Neo stares at him in awe, barely able to process the incredible display of power she has just witnessed. She realizes that the rumors she'd heard about Ryushin's prowess didn't even begin to cover the reality of his strength. Ryushin looks back at her with his piercing red eyes, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the absolute devastation around him. Neo's thoughts turn to Ostium, knowing that the gatekeeper possesses a unique ability that even brute force might struggle to overcome. Ostium takes a long drag from his cigar, his green aura flaring as he prepares to face the man who has dismantled his guards. Far above the chaos, the sprawling neon-lit skyline of Naftafel, the hidden city where countless terrorists dwell, waits in the twilight. Entering the city of Naftafel is a nightmare for bodyguards. Most don't even make it past the front door. That's mainly because Ostium, the legendary gatekeeper, is standing in the way. Ryushin takes a good look at the big man standing before him. Ostium is actually impressed. Wiping out that many grunts in a heartbeat is a hell of a feat. He's curious about the suitcase too, wondering if that's where all the weapons come from. Weapon skills aside, Ostium makes one thing clear: Ryushin isn't getting into the city. And the reason for that is simple. The gatekeeper starts venting a massive, swirling cloud of green energy. Ryushin watches closely as the energy begins to stabilize. The ground shakes as something massive begins to materialize from the mist. Huge eyes form on the surface of a giant metal structure. It's a transformation unlike anything Ryushin's seen before. The man is gone, replaced by a literal sentient gate blocking the path to Naftafel. Ryushin just readies his weapon. He's seen bigger. A blinding flash of light erupts as the transformation hits its peak. The giant eyes of the gate lock onto the bodyguard. Ryushin figures a bigger target just means he has more surface area to hit. He already told him he's getting in whether Ostium likes it or not. The gate looms over him, a cold and unyielding wall of steel. Time to see just how much damage this thing can take. Blue electricity dances across the suitcase as it shifts modes. It unfolds into a massive energy cannon aimed straight at the entrance. The weapon hums with power as it hits maximum charge. Ryushin pulls the trigger, unleashing a devastating beam of blue energy. He watches the impact closely through a scouter lens. The dust settles, but the gate hasn't moved an inch. There isn't even a scratch on it. Ryushin admits the durability of this thing is on another level. Neo yells from the ground, telling him brute force is a complete waste of energy. Word is 5 elite shielders teamed up and couldn't even dent this guy. The gate won't budge until a very specific condition is met. A condition, Ryushin pauses to process that new information. He asks Neo for the details, but she has no idea what the condition actually is. The gatekeeper just laughs. Of course she doesn't know, her brain is basically empty. Neo snaps back, furious at being called an airhead. Ostium mocks her for running her mouth after switching sides so easily. To him, she was nothing more than dead weight to the organization. Neo is desperate. She doesn't understand why they all hate her so much. Ostium spells it out for her. It's her total lack of intelligence. The raid notice was literally posted on the public bulletin board for everyone to read. Instead of reading it, she ran off with her subordinates and walked right into a trap. Neo is stunned that there was an actual notice. Ryushin realizes she's just that incompetent. Ostium bets she didn't read the contract with Ryushin either. Ryushin just tells them both to shut up. Ostium's glowing eyes narrow as he reminds Neo that people like her, who can't even follow simple instructions, have no place in his world. Neo snaps back, insisting she can read perfectly fine and that she's definitely not an idiot, but Ryushin isn't so sure. She even tries to brag about reading 2 books a week, though it turns out they were just fairy tales. Ignoring their bickering, Ryushin begins to think about the nature of conditions and how they limit power. Neo explains that superhumans often set specific rules on their abilities, ranging from the incredibly complex to the remarkably simple. The sentient gate of Naftoffel is Ostium's specialized power, serving as the bridge to other spaces. Ryushin analyzes the traffic. Dozens of terrorists pass through this entrance every single day. He realizes that if it's used that often, the condition for opening it can't be anything difficult. It must be something Neo simply overlooked. His eyes glow red as a realization hits him like a bolt of lightning. He stares at the massive wall, finally seeing the flaw in the gatekeeper's defense. Ryushin remains silent, letting the pieces of the puzzle fall into place in his mind. As Neo continues to shout about her intelligence, Ryushin bluntly tells her to shut up and listen. Neo is confused, wondering whose side Ryushin is actually on, but he just calmly states that he's got it. He's finally figured out exactly what it takes to get this gate to open. The trick was so simple he almost missed it, and it makes perfect sense why Ostium was so frustrated with Neo's mistake. Ryushin stands before the imposing living gate, which is the physical manifestation of Ostium's power. Bound on the ground, Neo is completely baffled by how the guard is handling the situation. Ryushin starts a little lecture, explaining that all awakened powers generally fall into 3 main categories. First, you have the offensive types, which are built purely for raw power and destruction. Then there are the defensive types, which prioritize durability above all else. And finally, there are special types that have unique activation conditions. He points out that for offensive powers, the more complicated the requirements are, the stronger the attack becomes. But for defensive powers, it's actually the exact opposite. Special types are way too varied to explain right now, so he moves on. Since Ostium's power turns him into a literal fortress gate, he's a pure defensive type. Ryushin notes that because the gate is so incredibly durable, the condition to actually open it has to be something extremely simple. He looks over at Neo, asking if she's starting to follow his logic. Glowing blue energy begins to crackle around his body. He announces that he's already found the answer. He leaps back, manifesting massive blue chains that ripple with power. The chains lash out, flying toward the center of the gate. They wrap tightly around the handles right in the middle of Ostium's face. Ryushin reveals the secret. The condition to open the gate isn't push, it's pull. Neo's jaw practically hits the floor in shock. She can't believe an invincible S-class defense would be that easy to bypass. Ryushin points out that every intruder for years has likely just tried to blast their way in. Every attack they threw was just more force pushing against the doors. Since the gate only opens by pulling, all that brute force actually kept it locked tight. It's a simple, brilliant trick that's kept everyone out for years. Neo is still skeptical until Ryushin says he has the definitive proof. He points toward the seam right between the giant eyes. Neo leans in, trying to see what could possibly be there. A faint glow highlights a small section of the metal frame. There it is, engraved in plain sight for anyone to see. It literally says the word "pull" right on the door. It even has a polite message asking visitors to please step back. Neo is absolutely stunned by the sheer absurdity of it. She screams at the gate, asking who would write the password right on the front door. Ostium's giant eye narrows in pure, unadulterated frustration. He snaps back, calling Neo the real idiot in this situation. Neo can only stare as the legendary Guardian completely loses his cool. Ostium yells that he wrote that sign specifically for her after she joined Tragedy. He's tried to explain it to her more times than he can even count. In a flashback, Neo just stands there blowing bubbles, complaining that the gate won't open. She gets impatient and starts kicking the door as hard as she can. She yells that it's stuck, while Ostium is literally begging her to just pull it open. In a flashback, Neo is seen kicking the gate with everything she's got, completely ignoring how it's supposed to work. Ostium complains that no matter how many hundreds of times he told them to pull, they just kept pushing. Back in the present, Ryushin holds the energy chains tight, nodding that there are always people who push even when it clearly says pull. Ostium screams that it's not just Neo. Everyone who tries to break in is an illiterate idiot who just rams into him. Neo breaks down in tears, admitting she actually had no idea that was the condition to open him. Tears stream down Ostium's giant eyes as he begs her to just learn how to read. Ryushin isn't interested in the drama and tells the gate to just open up since he's pulling it properly. Ostium's expression hardens as he refuses to let Ryushin pass, vowing to dig in his heels with everything he's got. Ryushin just gives a cold, confident smirk, asking the gatekeeper what exactly he's talking about. He clenches his fists, radiating blue energy, and declares that a gate that refuses to open. Ostium is horrified as he feels Ryushin's overwhelming strength starting to force his doors apart. Ryushin looms over him, suggesting that if it's going to be this stubborn, it should just say closed instead. Neo watches in awe as the massive stone doors are slowly dragged open by the glowing chains. Ryushin stares ahead with glowing red eyes, telling the gate to act like a gate and open wide. Ostium is devastated, lamenting that he's never once let an outsider in until this very moment. He shifts the blame entirely onto Neo, crying that if he hadn't written that warning specifically for her, Ryushin wouldn't have known. The Guardian screams that he'll never forgive her for being the reason his perfect record is ruined. He vows to hold this grudge forever, while Neo can only offer a nervous, guilty smile. On that day, a legend was shattered. The invincible gatekeeper of Naftafel was forced to shed tears of humiliation. Ostium's gate, a defense that was thought to be absolute, finally met its match. Ryushin walks through the open threshold with his briefcase in hand, and Neo following close behind. The path was finally thrown open for the world's most proactive guard. Ryushin had officially breached the sanctuary of the Tragedy Union. With the infiltration complete, Ryushin makes his way into the heart of the terrorist city. Meanwhile, at the sleek neon-lit Tragedy headquarters, the top brass is already gathering. Inside the darkened meeting room, the Union's executives wait in the shadows. Among them are a muscular warrior in heavy armor and a mysterious figure draped in wizard's robes. Palmer, the president of the Tragedy Union, leans forward and notes that everyone has arrived. He steeples his fingers, telling the group that it's time to begin their briefing. His purple eyes glow intensely as he prepares to address the threat currently walking through their streets. He starts the meeting by bringing up the bodyguard, Ryushin, and his successful infiltration. Palmer is calm and composed, seemingly unfazed by the fact that an intruder is on their doorstep. He explains to his executives that Ryushin's power isn't just brute force, it's a special type ability. Screens behind him display data on Ryushin, explaining that he stores his own energy inside the briefcase he carries. He goes on to detail how Ryushin uses that stored energy to manifest various high-tech weapons. One of the executives, a girl casually chewing bubble gum, asks if there are any known limitations to this power. Palmer speculates that Ryushin most likely can't summon any weapons if he doesn't have that bag with him. The wizard and the muscular woman wonder why Ryushin would even bother storming into their city in the first place. The woman asks if he's doing all this just because his idle client was attacked earlier. A screen displays an image of Ri, the silver-haired idol Ryushin is sworn to protect. The bubble-gum-chewing executive asks who even hired them to assassinate her, nodding that she doesn't even seem that famous. Palmer keeps the details vague, telling his team that there's something he can't reveal just yet. He steeples his fingers, promising that he'll share the full story eventually. The executives sit in silence as they weigh the gravity of the situation. Palmer watches a recording of Ryushin in action, emphasizing that they must neutralize him before he can do any more damage. Looking around the table at his most elite members, the president asks who is willing to step up and handle the intruder. Far below the headquarters, the neon lights of Naftafel stretch out across the massive, sprawling city. Ryushin, currently sporting a thick mustache and glasses as a disguise, notes that the terrorist city feels surprisingly ordinary. The streets are filled with people just trying to get by, looking like any other urban center at night. Bystanders go about their business, seemingly unaware that a legendary bodyguard has slipped past their defenses. Ryushin observes that no matter where people gather to live, the vibe eventually settles into a familiar routine. Neo, also in disguise with white horns, is carried over Ryushin's shoulder as she asks how much longer they have to play dress-up. She complains about the wait and tells him to just drop the act already, but Ryushin reminds her that they are too famous to walk around uncovered. He tells her to relax, saying that if anyone actually tries to start something, he'll just deal with them on the spot. Ryushin points out that the city is full of innocent civilians, but Neo finds it ironic that a supposed terrorist is worrying about them. They move through a busier plaza, where the local populace seems more relaxed under the glow of the storefronts. Ryushin confirms their next destination is the heart of the enemy territory, Tragedy HQ. After ducking into a quiet corner, Neo sheds her disguise and glares at him, frustrated by the suicidal plan. She can't believe her ears when he reiterates that they are going to storm the very place where all the top-tier villains hang out. Ryushin just crouches down and nonchalantly asks her if that's going to be a problem. Behind them, a massive, jagged skyscraper looms into the dark sky, crackling with purple energy, the stronghold of the Tragedy Union. Ryushin stares her down, reminding her of his core belief when it comes to being a bodyguard. His eyes glow with a dangerous red light as he explains that the best protection is to gather all the threats in one place and wipe them out. Neo is incredulous, shouting at him for thinking he can just waltz into a fortress like that all by himself. Ryushin gives her a sly look, pointing out that he isn't exactly alone since he has her with him. She immediately snaps back, screaming that she is a proud terrorist and definitely not on his side. Ryushin ignores her outburst, telling her to face the facts. Her own people have already abandoned her and it's time to atone. Neo tries to talk some sense into him, suggesting they at least take the time to find some allies or prepare a proper strategy. Ryushin scoffs at the idea, knowing their enemies aren't just going to sit around and wait for them to get ready. He stands up and grabs his briefcase, arguing that a long, drawn-out conflict is the last thing they want. He looms over her with a confident grin, telling her to quit stalling and lead the way to the headquarters. Neo stares up at him in silence, her mind racing as she tries to figure out her next move. She seethes internally, thinking that the contract between them is a total joke that she has no intention of honoring. Back in his mustache disguise, Ryushin hands Neo some food and tells her to enjoy it while she still can. Meanwhile, the logo for Naftoffel's private security firm, Security, glows ominously in the distance. Ryushin continues to munch on his dango, completely unaware of the treacherous thoughts swirling in Neo's head. Neo plays along for now, plotting to clear up her betrayal by handing Ryushin over to the security forces as soon as she gets the chance. She smiles to herself, imagining the moment she can finally go back to her life as a regular high-ranking terrorist. Her eyes narrow as she spots a poster plastered on a nearby wall. It's a pair of wanted notices, featuring clear images of both Ryushin and herself. Her own poster lists a massive bounty of $200,000, with a chilling instruction to inflict maximum pain. Ryushin looks at the posters and huffs, clearly annoyed that Neo's bounty is higher than his own. Neo just lets out a dark, satisfied chuckle, enjoying the small victory even in their current situation. Still in her white-haired disguise, Neo laughs manically as they approach the HQ, commenting on their wrong turn. Inside the Tragedy Union's boardroom, the atmosphere is heavy as the members suggest that Palmer should be the one to deal with Ryushin. Palmer looks up, a look of genuine surprise crossing his face at the unexpected demand from his subordinates. The Wizard Tragedy member emphasizes that they have no intention of following orders when the client's identity remains hidden. The other executives agree, with the Bubblegum Tragedy member pointedly stating that Palmer is the only one with all the information. Palmer stares back in silence, his purple eyes glowing intensely as he gauges the loyalty of the people around the table. With a deep sigh, the president gives in, admitting that he was going to tell them the truth sooner or later anyway. As the group listens intently, Palmer begins to reveal the name of the person who orchestrated the plot against the idol, Ree. A sudden, violent rumble shakes the entire building, interrupting the president before he can finish his sentence. Bystanders on the streets below stop and stare in confusion as a thunderous boom echoes from the top of the skyscraper. Palmer's eyes widen as he sees the reflection of a figure crashing down through the ceiling of their high-security sanctuary. The top floor of the headquarters erupts in a shower of glass and debris as the intruder forces his way inside. The local citizens look on in horror, witnessing the literal downfall of the city's most feared criminal organization. The air inside the room whistles with the pressure of the sudden breach as dust and smoke fill the air. Ryushin emerged from the chaos, having discarded his disguise to reveal his true, formidable self to the shocked executives. He slams down onto the center of the meeting table with incredible force, holding Ni tightly as he lands. Ryushin drops the last of his disguise and stares down the executives, glad that he doesn't have to waste time searching for them. Neo trembles in his grasp, terrified by the scale of the destruction, while Ryushin fixes his cold gaze on Palmer. Palmer can't help but be impressed by the bodyguard's sheer recklessness, as Ryushin declares that the real work has just begun. Tragedy, the largest terrorist organization in the world. It's run by Chairman Palmer and his 5 vice-chairmen. Ryushin and Neo find themselves at the center of their meeting room, surrounded by the top brass. One of the vice-chairmen is impressed, nodding that Ryushin looks even better in person than in his file. Ryushin keeps his gaze cold, showing zero intimidation. Hesk looks on with a smirk, feeling nostalgic about his own younger days. The others aren't as welcoming, calling him green and betting he won't live much longer with that attitude. Nader remains silent, her eyes glowing with a mysterious light. Chairman Palmer laughs at the audacity of an intruder, charging into enemy territory all by himself. Ryushin points out he isn't alone, but Neo immediately panics, swearing she isn't with him. Palmer offers him a seat to talk, but Ryushin isn't interested in being a guest. He's done playing nice. With a sudden burst of speed, Ryushin lunges at Palmer with an electrical charge. Electricity crackles from his hand as he delivers a point-blank strike. He makes it clear he has nothing to say to a bunch of terrorists. His red eyes focus on the target, but his hand passes right through Palmer's head like it's made of air. Ryushin is left staring at his own hand in confusion. Palmer's image glitches with static. He tells him it isn't an ability at all. They're all just holograms, Palma mocks him for thinking the world's busiest terrorists would actually gather in person. Ryushin's frustration starts to show. The chairman tells him to stop flattering himself. He hasn't reached the level where he can stand before them yet. Suddenly, purple energy sparks around Ryushin. A massive, crushing weight slams into him, forcing him down to one knee. Palma watches the struggle with a calm, condescending look. Ryushin grits his teeth against the pressure, pinning him to the floor. He tries to identify what kind of ability he's up against. Palma seems amused by his persistence. Seeing Ryushin's guts, the chairman decides to reward him with one piece of information. He leans in, his holographic image flickering. Ryushin can only listen as the revelation hits him. The client who ordered Ri's assassination is someone Ryushin already knows. The holograms begin to fade as Ryushin reels from the news. Neo screams at him to snap out of it because they don't have time to think. She's terrified, screaming that they are coming. Ryushin picks her up by her collar, asking who she's talking about. Outside, a line of armored tactical vehicles comes to a screeching halt. Neo identifies them as the marshals. Ryushin looks back at the hole in the wall, prepared for a fight. The back of the primary vehicle opens up. Inside, a man in a crisp uniform calmly adjusts his bow tie. Maestro, the president of security, steps forward and comments on the percussion of the explosions. Maestro adjusts his monocle, nodding that it's been quite a while since he's had a decent performance. Neo is in a total meltdown, convinced that the arrival of security means their journey is over. Ryushin asks how dangerous this guy could possibly be, but Neo tells him his threat level is S-Class. Ryushin looks unimpressed, comparing it to Neo's own S-Class rank, but she explains that S-Class is as high as the scale goes for regular standards. She gets defensive, telling him they don't actually sort things that way. Neo explains that tragedy doesn't just act like a gang, it operates like a massive corporation. The lower-tier C and D classes are basically the section chiefs of the company. Moving up, the B-class members are the department heads. The A-class members hold the title of deputy directors. Anything beyond that is handled by the S-class, and their actual combat strength can vary wildly depending on their seat. Neo stares in wide-eyed terror at the man standing before them. He is the president of security, the man in charge of every bit of tragedy's internal defense. She warns Ryushin that the man is insanely powerful. Maestro raises his hands like he's about to lead a symphony, blue energy swirling around him. He brandishes his conductor's baton and declares the start of his first movement, Allegro. A violent wave of sonic energy slams into Ryushin and Neo. The blast is powerful enough to send them crashing through the floor and debris. Neo is sobbing on the ground, already accepting her defeat. Maestro turns back to his squad, ready to continue the show. He commands his marshals to play a requiem for the intruders as they salute him. Tragedy isn't just a group of thugs, it's a global leader in the terrorism business. At the top is Chairman Palma, supported by 5 vice-chairmen who run the show with him. Under them are 10 presidents who each manage a different subsidiary of the company. Neo confirms that's exactly how the power structure flows. Among those presidents are the marshals, the elite unit that handles all high-level security. And the man they're facing right now is their leader, Maestro. Ryushin ignores the drama and asks Neo what her rank is. She tells him she's a director. He sighs, thinking that explains why she feels weak, but she snaps back that directors are actually very high-ranking. Ryushin finds it ironic that a group of terrorists is so obsessed with their own internal security. He looks over and notices that the marshals have stopped their attack for the moment. Ryushin's red eyes scan the group, wondering why they're all holding musical instruments. Each member of the orchestra-type unit is armed with a weaponized instrument. Violins and cellos are held ready like high-tech artillery. Ryushin stands there thoughtfully, feeling like they're overlooking something crucial. One of the marshals, Bio, salutes her president and reports that the civilian evacuation is complete. Maestro claps his hands in approval, calling her work splendid. He looks back at the building where the intruders are hiding. Tuba powers up a massive, glowing golden energy blast, ready to level the whole building with one shot. Maestro tells her to stand down, saying there's no need for such extreme measures. He asks his squad what their purpose is, and they proudly remind him they are the marshals of tragedy. He bows, insisting that they handle the situation with elegance and gentlemanly conduct. The marshals exchange confused looks, wondering if their president has finally gone senile. In a flashback, a mountain of cash rains down, the ultimate motivation for any corporate enterprise. Maestro stands formally before a superior, remembering a business conversation from just the other day. Chairman Palma sits at his desk, questioning if the extreme property damage is truly necessary for their security operations. With a serious expression, Palma informs Maestro that all future repair bills will be sent straight to the security department from now on. The news of the financial repercussions leaves Maestro completely stunned, his monocle nearly popping off his face. Back in the present, Ryushin and Neo watch from the rubble, wondering why the enemy has momentarily halted their assault. Maestro clears his throat and signals his team, preparing to resume the performance with more precision. He directs a trio of his elite marshals to move in and capture the intruders immediately. Bio, the blonde marshal with the violin, questions their specific roles in the upcoming confrontation. Maestro pauses to think, deciding that the remaining units will stay back to provide necessary support from the sidelines. The three designated marshals begin their synchronized march toward the target, instruments held at the ready. Ryushin remains calm, observing that the president of security is finally making a serious move against them. Maestro raises his baton with professional flair, the atmosphere crackling with musical energy. The marshals raise their weaponized instruments as they approach the building where the duo is hiding. With a shout of presto, Maestro commands a high-speed attack that catches the intruders off guard. Musical notes and sonic energy waves swirl around the marshals as they launch a coordinated strike. Ryushin readies his tech shield, acknowledging that the real battle is just beginning. Suddenly, Bio raises a hand to halt the violence, claiming there is a procedural matter they have to do first. To Ryushin's utter disbelief, the terrorist, Marshal, begins reciting his Miranda rights with perfect legal precision. Neo is just as confused by the legal jargon, shouting at the officer in absolute shock. Neo tries to plead her case, claiming everything is a misunderstanding while Ryushin looks on with a sweat drop. Bio cheerfully reveals that Maestro ordered Neo to be taken alive, as her low intellect makes her incapable of true rebellion. Ryushin is skeptical of the turn of events, but Neo seems to be falling for the Marshal's strange brand of mercy. Overjoyed at the compliment to her loyalty, Neo begins to see the Marshals as true protectors of the people. Neo bursts into tears of gratitude, her previous fear completely replaced by overwhelming admiration. She loudly thanks the violin folks for their kindness, much to Ryushin's annoyance. The Marshals react with a flicker of offense at being called simple violin folks. Ryushin stares blankly at the scene, realizing the situation has taken a turn for the absurd. Neo looks up with wide, innocent eyes, completely oblivious to the growing tension. Ryushin sighs and addresses Neo as the three marshals loom over them. The atmosphere shifts back to a deadly one as the marshals prepare to hand down a death sentence. Neo is baffled by the sudden, terrifying mood swing of the blonde woman she just praised. Bio is visibly offended, asking if Ryushin really just addressed her as Ms. Violin. Ryushin maintains a straight face, pointing out that she is, in fact, holding a violin. Ryushin continues the insults by calling the second silver-haired marshal a violin as well. When he refers to the third marshal as a big violin, the muscular man's face turns red with absolute fury. Neo is terrified by the demonic aura beginning to radiate from the insulted orchestra. The marshals declare that Neo will be executed along with Ryushin for his lack of musical knowledge. Ryushin genuinely asks if he said something wrong, completely missing the nuances of string instruments. Bio smiles condescendingly, clarifying that while she is a violin, the others are not. The silver-haired marshal proudly identifies himself as a viola player. The largest member of the trio finalizes the correction, stating with pride that he is a cellist. Bio offers a surprising concession, telling Ryushin she'll try to lobby the president to waive his death sentence, an offer he accepts with a casual thanks. Left behind in the negotiations, Neo cries out in anguish, wondering why she is the only one still facing a summary execution. Bio's demeanor shifts as she realizes that the aggression of her fellow marshals has left her with no choice but to follow through with the arrest. The viola and cello marshals don't need further encouragement, raising their weapons as lethal energy begins to swirl around them. Neo screams in terror as Bio officially delivers the final verdict. Neo, the traitor, will be executed right here and now. A massive explosion of purple energy tears through the structure as the marshals unleash their first coordinated attack. Smoke and debris fill the air as the shockwaves from the musical assault ripple through the battlefield. The marshals are stunned to see Ryushin standing tall before them, his glowing tech shield effortlessly blocking their opening salvo. Ryushin stands protectively in front of Neo, accidentally admitting she is his cash cow before quickly correcting himself to client. He locks eyes with the three marshals, his crimson gaze hardening as he addresses them by their musical instruments. With a determined glare, Ryushin officially classifies the marshals as threats and vows to eliminate them all on the spot. Meanwhile, Maestro watches the escalation in horror, desperately pleading for his team to fight gentlemanly to save on repair costs. The elite guard unit surrounds Ryushin and the unconscious Neo, their musical weapons at the ready. Bio asks her team if they're ready to begin. They respond with a cold, professional nod. She announces their opening act, String Trio Divertimento. Ryushin watches them with a look of complete indifference. The trio begins to play, their bows moving across the strings with lethal precision. Purple and green energy notes swirl through the air as the performance kicks into gear. Ryushin pulls out his glowing dagger and tells Neo she needs to wake up right now. A massive wave of energy comes crashing down on their position. Neo wakes up on the floor, dazed as blue electricity sparks around her. Ryushin tells her he can't protect her and dodge at the same time. If she wants to live, she's got to handle the dodging herself. The floor erupts as a barrage of musical energy slams into the ground. Ryushin is a blur, narrowly avoiding the colorful blasts tearing through the room. He keeps a steady eye on the trio, calculating their next move. He deploys his briefcase shield just as another energy wave hits. He flips backwards, staying just ahead of the sonic pulses. The attacks are relentless, turning the floor into a cratered mess wherever he lands. Ryushin sticks the landing and looks back at them. He actually compliments them, calling the whole thing a magnificent performance. The guards don't break their rhythm, keeping the pressure on. Ryushin admits that the power behind their music is pretty terrifying. Bio is thrilled, glad to see someone finally has a good ear for their work. Ryushin blocks another direct hit with his shield. The battlefield fills with destructive melodies as the trio continues. Bio gets close and tells him she's almost reluctant to kill him. She offers him a chance to surrender quietly. Ryushin isn't interested. He tells them they're too valuable to leave alive and suggests they come down and face him properly. Neo is losing it in the background, screaming at them to stop flirting and just fight. Ryushin ignores her and asks if she can't hear the beautiful harmony. Neo shouts back that she's too busy dodging for her life to care about the music. Ryushin sighs, calling the situation a waste. Neo begs him for a break from his nonsense. Bio stays focused, letting the violin lead the melody. The viola bridges the gap, while the cello anchors the whole thing from below. Together, they make a perfectly synchronized trio. Ryushin watches them, admitting he could listen to this all day. Neo screams at him to do something before she ends up dead. He tells her it's not that he won't finish them, it's that he currently can't. Their teamwork is so perfect that there's not a single opening for him to slip into. He starts going on again about the harmony woven by the instruments. Neo finally snaps, screaming about how tired she is of hearing about violins and cellos. She shouts at the top of her lungs that it all sounds exactly the same to her. The music stops instantly, The trio looks absolutely stunned. The atmosphere turns dark as they stare her down, clearly offended. They can't believe someone would have such bad ears. Neo realizes she might have just signed her own death warrant. Neo keeps shouting, telling them it's all the same to her. She doesn't stop, mocking their obsession with harmony when they all look and sound the same anyway. A bow is gripped tight as the marshal's patience finally snaps. The trio glows with a menacing purple aura, asking if she seriously can't tell the difference between their masterpieces. Neo isn't backing down, calling out the absurdity of having multiple people play the same kind of instruments. She starts running for her life as the trio prepares to show her exactly how different they are. The marshals resume their performance, eyes glowing as they channel their energy. A massive pink blast of sonic energy slams into the ground, sending Neo flying. Bio leads the charge, explaining that the violin carries the highest voice and the main theme. Another hit connects, this time a bright green surge that has Neo screaming in pain. The viola player chimes in, saying his middle voice is what shapes the atmosphere of the entire piece. He unleashes a purple beam that pins Neo to the ground. Finally, the cello player adds his part, providing the depth and weight that anchors the sound. Bio looms over the chaos, asking the demon if she understands the complexity of their art now. Ryushin steps into the light, telling them it's perfectly clear. He admits that each of them possesses incredible individual skill and presence. An explosion of sound and light fills the area. Bio looks shocked as she realizes Ryushin is standing right in the middle of their coordinated strike. He begins to move, dodging their attacks with ease. He notes that their teamwork was perfect before. But now, because they're all trying to hog the spotlight, individually to prove a point, their attacks are uncoordinated and easy to slip through. The trio tries to regroup, their musical weapons glowing as they struggle to keep the rhythm. Ryushin's energy weapon shatters through their purple barrier like glass. He charges up a massive blast from his briefcase, the blue light illuminating the whole room. The marshals can only watch in horror as the energy peaks. He fires, a beam of pure blue energy carving a path through the headquarters. As the dust settles, Ryushin looks on coldly, dismissing their uncoordinated mess as nothing but noise. The string trio is caught in the wake of the explosion, blown back by the sheer force. Maestro and the other guards can only watch as their elite unit is dismantled. The entire side of the Tragedy Union building erupts in a massive fireball. Maestro screams in agony, not for his soldiers, but for the repair bill this is going to cost him. Rubble and bodies rain down from the sky as the structural damage mounts. The unit scrambles as they land in the wreckage outside. The string trio lies defeated among the debris, their instruments shattered. A guard checks on the survivors, frantically asking if everyone is still breathing. Bio is barely conscious, her pride hurt more than her body. Maestro collapses to his knees, sobbing over the destruction of his expensive equipment. He wails in a spotlight of despair, wondering how on earth he's going to pay for all this. But the sadness quickly turns to rage as he looks up, his eyes fixated on the cause of his financial ruin. Ryushin and Neo emerge from the smoke, looking completely unscathed. Maestro stands up, his cape fluttering as he declares they will avenge the fallen trio. Ryushin just smiles, his red eyes glowing with excitement. He tells the captain he's looking forward to the next piece.